What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are coming to you live from a couple of places on the internet. We are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Twitch. We're live on X, formerly known as Twitter. Or maybe you're listening to us later on Apple or Spotify or Android or wherever you get your podcast. It's all good. And I'll tell you what, it is midway through the month, but we got a thing that we do once a month, and we haven't been together for a couple of weeks now. Usually at the beginning of the month, we pay tribute to some of the fine folks that support us at patreon.com/comic book club. Anybody at the $5 and up level, we read out their names as a bit of thank you. We, of course, thank absolutely everybody, but we want to do that here. So why don't we get into it and kick it off with Oidis Larson,
Aaron C. Hollis,
Adam DeRose,
Adam Marks,
Adriel Moreland,
Elena Fontenot,
Amanda Harris,
Andrew Primo,
Ashy G,
Beercat PhD,
Benjamin Brown,
Carly W,
Carrie Matthews,
Chris Leatherman,
Christina Jaramillo,
Christina Rensfield,
Chris Terralizzi,
Clemens Lure,
Dan Snow,
Daniel Cabral,
Daniel Fuentes,
Daniel Warden,
Denny Heck,
Debbie Gloom,
Dennis Scott,
Derek Mainhart,
Doug Sataway,
Dylan LJ,
Eduardo Martinez,
Emma Quish,
Enrique Chumbis,
Jeffrey Risher,
Gerard de Villiers.
Ian Rainey,
Ian Rainey,
Shouts, double it up. Not a mistake. It's real. Ian's there twice. He loves it. Isaac Carter,
Jake Fry,
James Connolly,
Jaron Townsend,
Jason Donahue,
Jeffrey Whaley,
John George,
John Jen Henderson,
Jonathan Jong,
Jonathan McCool,
Joshua W. Broxson.
Joshua Wright,
Joshua Wright, probably twice.
Oh my God. You guys just roll with it. Julian Lobato,
KC Newhaven,
Kelby,
Kevin Kleinrock,
Kieran Broderick,
Cody Thomas,
Luana Thomas,
Lucas Sink,
Matt Tice,
Matthew C. Hernandez,
Matthew De Palma,
Michael McAuliffe,
Michael Tillman,
Nelson Kelso Martinez,
Nick G,
Grayson, actually different,
official CBC chef, Brett Macris, aka Stray Bullet.
Give Pete some space for that one. Omnia Soul Art.
Orin Dix,
Prerogative Ambulance,
Ooh, stunned by that many letters so close together. Rev Mikey.
Robert Pettinato,
Roxanne Tyler,
Shouts to my mom, Riley Trahan,
Sarah Schottmuller,
Sarah Schaefer,
Scott Carpenter,
Scott England,
Stanley,
Tamila Rush,
Taylor Bryan,
The Big Flood,
The 12 Bench,
Victor Perez,
Will Buchanan,
William Leach,
Zachary Bachman.
and Zika's Viral Comics.
Thank you to all of those folks. And once again, thank you to anybody who supports us at patreon.com/comic book club. For as low as $2 a month, you get access to our Patreon Slack where we argue all day about comic books and movies and food and things
Truly.
like that. Very fun. And you
think
also
we
get
have
access to our
very
back
good
catalog of
content.
podcasts from 2011 all the way through 2022, soon to be updated all the way through 2023. That is literally thousands of podcasts, many that are not online elsewhere anymore. So please support us. It really, really helps. There is a lot of cost that goes into the show. So any amount of money you can throw our way would be
and that's why
appreciated.
we especially shout out the people supporting us twice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh my God. They're the best.
so cool.
We'll read out their names again at the end of the show, right?
Yeah, like always.
Yeah,
I'm always reading that. I'm like at the end of the night, it's like a reverse aria.
Mhm.
I say that list of names in a positive way. I'm
Yeah.
not going to kill those people. I'm going to love them.
100%.
The Kobe got me when you were like, Kobe.
Oh,
Okay,
that's what you're.
I see. Well, listen, we have a lot of guests tonight, so I do want to get to them later in the show. Nandor Shaffer is going to be here, as well as Jason Michael Primrose. But first, we want to kick it off with somebody who only has two names. He is the creator of Depths,
Get to
which
the
is
point.
currently on
Get to the names.
Zoop. Wells Thompson. Wells, welcome to the show.
Also, not to overly correct, I have 4 names.
Oh, do you?
Scott
What?
William Randolph Thompson is my full name. Wells is
Wow,
Rabbi, so
wow, that's epic.
Whoa! And how'd you end up in Wells? It's a whole different name.
it's a whole story. Don't worry about it. The point is,
You
No,
love
well-
making wishes.
You're looking for
You love that scene in Goonies when the jacket comes up.
exactly.
You love
Yeah,
Wells.
you got it, man.
Well, listen, before we get into it, we don't do this for everybody. But our official CDC chef, Brett Macris, wants a show. He'll usually either curate or create a drink for the show. And this show, he was particularly inspired by the cover of your book, Depths.
Ooh.
So here, I'm going to bring it up here. Created a drink called The Depths. On the cover, you got a guy in a champagne glass. So this is served in a champagne glass. You can use Prosecco, Aperol, Amaro, a saline solution because it tastes
Mhm.
the ocean, orange bitters, and a big whole orange peel, and you mix them all together. Sounds very delicious. I did not make it because I did not have Prosecco around. Justin, did you make this one this week?
I didn't, but I'm going to because I'm very intrigued by the saline nature of this.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, there you go. Drink for your book, The Depths. I'm sure it's great, just like this book, which we're going to talk about right now. So this is
I'm a bartender, so I was looking at that like, ooh, that actually looks kind of good.
We'll send it to you. We'll send it your way.
Just real quick on that, Alex. I was feeling bartender energy from your book. The page here is very bartender, like you can sense the experience right in there.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
As a former bartender as well.
To be clear, this book isn't completely about bartending. What it actually is about is a guy who gets trapped under the ocean for 3 years and his friend who comes after them. You're dealing with depression. You're dealing with some serious issues. It seems like an undersea adventure at the same time. Talk about the inspiration of the book a little bit.
Yeah, it was sort of born out of a period of me and my friend Dalton's life. He's my co-writer on this. Right after we graduated from college, where we were trying to kind of hold on to our, sense of wanting to create stuff, wanting to be creative, but being away from that community aspect. We didn't have workshops to lean on anymore. We didn't have people around, and that feeling of like isolation of trying to strike out on your own. We've both struggled with anxiety, depression, mental health issues. And so it was something that resonated with us quite a bit. Dalton had this idea, or just this image pop in his head of a guy trapped underwater in this old timey diving suit. And we ran with it. Yeah, it's very much about trying to survive in a hostile environment, which is what, life in isolation often feels like, whether you're underwater or living through a pandemic or just striking it out on your own for the first time.
I did want to ask you about just sort of the logistics here, and maybe this is something that gets delved into in the book, but what was involved in figuring out, okay, how does a person survive under the ocean for 3 years?
I mean, there's definitely a little dash of just like roll with it. It's it's not 100% meant to be literal. It's 1930s technology. There's no way this could have worked. But there is some explanation given. The idea is, in order to create kind of a perpetual oxygen situation, you would need to put a current through water to separate out the oxygen and hydrogen, spit the hydrogen out, feed yourself oxygen. You theoretically, as long as you can put the CO2 somewhere, you theoretically have an infinite breathing supply. Which is similar to how submarines work, but slightly different.
Wow.
And then you account for there's just like a pocket that he shoves food into, and that's supposed to like grind it up and feed it to him. Again, it was like you're just gonna have to roll with it to past a certain point. But once you hand wave that, it's much more about like, what are the mental tasks of survival at the bottom of the ocean. It was a lot of fun to work on and a lot of fun to think through kind of the logistical challenges of it.
Well, not to get too personal about it, and if you don't feel comfortable, obviously don't talk about this.
I'm
But
comfortable with anything.
okay, great.
Wow.
So you're saying these are real emotions and real things that you went
Absolutely.
through with depression and anxiety. What then is it like returning to those emotions to write them through characters?
I mean, in a way, it's it can be really heavy just because you have to kind of put yourself back there to explore what's going on, but it can be really freeing and therapeutic as well. And I think more the talking about it like in a promotional sense is heavier than the exploring it through fiction. That was the really like freeing and sort of cathartic part of it all. When I have to every day get on Twitter, which is already a mistake, to say like, "Hey, check out this book that's about overcoming depression." It's like, oh man, this is a bummer. It is about that. It's also just it's all a lot of things at once. It's a really solid, just like adventure story where you know. It's about surviving under the sea. It's a sort of coded metaphor for depression, and it's a really interesting period piece, kind of all stuck together.
Well, what drew you to this time period as well? Because there's a lot of time periods to be under the sea.
I think we wanted it sort of. First of all, I love that era, the sort of like post World War I to Great Depression kind of aesthetic and what was going on in the Western world at that point. Thematically, the Great Depression was a great time to set it in, as which is like there's the obvious pun, but it also creates like legitimate logistical concerns for the characters. Like they don't have infinite money to throw around to look for a mill. It's also so like further back in the past, you can kind of imagine, we had that incident with the submarine a few, how long ago was that? I don't know what time is anymore.
It was either like so long ago or yesterday.
It was either last month or like 2 years ago, and I can't remember which. But no, the idea, like we would have tabs on that, we would have news, there would be like we would be able to track it to some extent, or it feels like if it were today. Whereas 1930s, if it's gone, it's just like, well, what can we do?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, back then that was like their space. They were like, can you imagine ever going deeper than 10 feet underwater? And it was like the frontier. They were like, we'll never go up in the sky. Why don't we just go down all the way to Sequest DSV, a show about Star Trek that was Star Trek underwater.
Absolutely.
At the end of that.
Yeah, and that's where we finished up, and then we were done with the sea.
Then we were like, we get the sea. We've caught it.
False. We know very little about the ocean, which is one of the reasons why it was really a cool place to set things, and why I'm shocked more things aren't set in the deep ocean, because it's such a weird. Naturally, you don't have to invent a lot of stuff like create any weird aliens for underwater. They're all just like that. So it's really easy to come up with really interesting scenarios and cool stuff to put on a page when you're dealing with the deep ocean.
It is amazing how much of the ocean we still don't understand.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, there's giant squids under there, and we're like, quite shoulder shrug. It's like, what?
Giant squids are like the least weird thing you can.
Well,
find
then when you were researching for this book, was there anything in particular that shocked you or blew your mind under the sea? Right?
I mean, I've been doing like research about deep ocean for as long as I can remember. I grew up super obsessed with sharks, so that was like my first thing that I wanted to be, was a marine biologist. And so it wasn't already, it was just like, oh, you want to do an underwater thing? This is not foreign territory to me. I don't know. There's nothing down there that makes me like, oh my God, that's insane. I'm just like, yeah, that tracks. Learning that there's a fish that's 2 inches long that's basically all teeth, or that those angler fish that you think of aren't like the size of a football. They're like the size of a truck. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of stuff down that's you sort of learn to expect when it comes to weird stuff under the ocean. But also in doing this, I got to, interact with a bunch of people whose job it is to like research underwater stuff and ask them about, what their favorite biodiversity is and what kind of animals live at this range and what would be the concerns. It wasn't like it was all stuff that blew my mind, but it was all just like, that is intensely interesting. I could live the rest of my life just researching this book, and it would be worth it. It would be gratifying.
So many creative projects we all pursue. It's like, I'm writing this. I'm more interested in just talking to people about this for my life.
Yeah,
write this thing as well.
It's a gateway talker. Speaking of which, let's gateway talk about the Zoop campaign and what is involved there, because as mentioned, you got 8 days left at this point.
Mm-hmm. We are hitting crunch time.
You are hitting crunch time.
Let's do it.
You've got the physical book. You've got a couple of cute little stickers here. Here, I'll bring up the screen.
But Douglas believes in you.
What people can expect.
The style of the book is super grounded and looks very looks very like 1-to-1, and then you have Douglas, who is out of like a Saturday morning cartoon, and we wanted to do that because the book deals with some heavy themes and has a lot of like, we talk a lot about grief and depression about the book, but it's not only that, and we wanted something to communicate that. And Douglas is a character in the book. He's a giant Pacific octopus that sort of acts like Emil's dog underwater. And so we thought it would be a lot of fun to make him sort of the actual mascot of the book. You can get a sticker and an enamel pin that says Douglas believes in you.
That's awesome.
Well, what is this last week like then? What is your big game plan, if anything? Come on, podcasts, I guess.
Podcasts are definitely it. Just making sure people are aware of the campaign and the fact that we're sort of in the last space to get it. Calling on people who backed in the past. This was a campaign before on Kickstarter. Raised close to $15,000. If we get that volume back, we'll already have it and more. We just need to spread the word as much as possible.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, happy to hopefully give you the vaunted CBC bump here. I guess we'll see what happens. Wells, congratulations on the project. It's very cool.
So much.
Good luck.
Very cool.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you.
Enjoy the cocktail.
Yes,
absolutely. We'll do.
Yeah, I'll send it your way. All right. Thanks, Wells.
Later.
All right. There we go. Once again, the project is called Depths. It's on Zoop for 8 more days as we're taping. If you're listening later, it's not 8 days. It's less than that. So get on it.
Oh, man.
That Zoop.
That's urgency, Alex.
It is urgency. Speaking of urgency, let's go. Funnily enough, I think we're actually going in descending order of days. So why don't we go over to our next guest, who is returning guest Nandor Shaffer. Nandor, welcome. Hello.
Hey, guys.
Good to have you back again, talking about a new project, The Fabled Offering, which is on Kickstarter right now. And you, I don't know if this happened earlier today or if it already happened, but you passed your goal.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was I think it was Sunday. It was over the weekend where we passed our goal, and which is great, especially going into the last week of a campaign. You can kind of relax a little bit. You're not as stressed out. You're not waking up in the middle of the night, like beating yourself up for like, what did I do wrong? Or what's the matter with the book? So yeah, it's great to be in this place. I think this is my second campaign that I've ever done where we funded at least like a week or two before it ended. So I'm feeling really, really excited and proud of it.
Awesome. We'll talk about the project a little bit. And I know this isn't exactly you, but I love the visuals of this book in particular.
Yeah.
It's just like so specific in terms of the art style. The story obviously is very specific as well, but talk about the project and how it came together.
Yes. So the Fabled Offering was my, I approach all my books somewhat as experiments. I'm always trying to challenge myself as a writer, as a creator, and do something different. And if you look at my past work, you see how the Fabled Offering is nothing like it. And it is kind of my stab at the fantasy sci-fi genre and trying to do a little genre mashup with those things and take what I love about both of them and put them in a very character driven story. I wanted to do a story about a warrior princess who is Aurelia there and who has just gotten done fighting this big war, this huge war that her kingdom was fighting with this other race called the Macmol, and she's in this place where she is done fighting. She has finished. She has accomplished her mission, but she doesn't know what to do with herself now. She's she's in this place of directionlessness, and trying to figure out what she needs to do, and that's where we find her in the story, and then we learn that later on that she becomes a mother and she is pregnant in the story, and she is on a quest to save herself and her kingdom from her own past trauma, and she is trying to attempt to get to Gafira Mountain, which is this mount to meet this ancient deity. And this is a story that all my stories are very character driven, and all of them are birthed from soul characters kind of struggles and what their desires are, and trying to give them a sense of agency and have them face really difficult choices, as we all do in our own lives. And so Aurelia has to really face an impossible decision in this book and figure out how to cope and accept her own decisions and her choices.
I love a good quest comic, and this is epic, man. This really not only looks but sounds amazing. So congratulations.
Speaking of sounds amazing, real quick, we got a comment here from YouTube. Michael Tillman says, "Kudos to Nandor's microphone, chef kiss."
Yeah,
well, thank you. Yeah,
it is.
I've had so many. Yeah, I've had so many people tell me I need to do my own radio show or podcast or something, and they're like, you have the smoothest voice in comics, and I need to use that tagline and use it for myself, like the smoothest voice in comics.
Yeah, I want to hear an epic histories told by you somehow.
Yeah,
real or made up.
To get back to this book really quickly before we get back to talking about your microphone again. So this is. I mean, you said she becomes a mother over the course of the story. I do love this very iconic sort of image of a pregnant warrior. Was that what it started with, or did that grow out of the development of the story?
Oh yeah, no, that was the complete, centerpiece to the story. I thought, we've seen, warrior princess types. We've seen, just a standard warrior, and but we don't really see pregnant main characters in stories, and there's a good reason for that, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but it really captivated me. I was like, what, the stakes are high in a journey of any struggle and hardship, but the stakes are even higher when you have a character that is not only defending their life but the life of their unborn child, and just what would cause someone to go on this journey by themselves without any support from her kingdom or anyone there with her. What it adds, for me, it added a lot of mystery and intrigue to what her own motivations might be, and also why she would go to such lengths to put herself in this position where she's so vulnerable.
While we're talking characters, can you talk about the creation of who I'm calling Eyeball Mouth? Because that strikes me as a character that you would have a nightmare about and very quickly write it down and then try to go back to sleep.
Yeah, he's such or I should say they are such a interesting character, because this is our deity character. This is our transcendent being called Sizen, and he is the ever witness, or the Sendeomai is what I call him in the book, and he is this character that represents the past, present, and future. He's somewhat of a time deity, and you see the three faces there represent the past, present, and future. And so when you are when he is in the story in the book, he's coming from, like, in the situation that we're in, he's seeing it from all these different timelines and perspectives, and which is a really interesting idea that I wanted to play with, because when we're reading a comic, we're so locked into the present moment. I thought it'd be interesting to write a character that would necessarily know the outcome or wouldn't know the outcome, and have that conversation with themselves while the situation is actually happening. And yeah, I wanted to. This was one of the most fun character designs to try to come up with, and take so the crown is like this ruby crown of thorns, basically, that where it has perpetual blood that is just like flowing down the veil of Sizen, and we see that he has this eye in his mouth, and of course the veil is covering where his eyes would be, and the eye is there because I just thought it was like a very it strikes you right there, and you're like, that's creepy, and that's a little scary, and that's a little weird, and it just it just was like, why not do that? Why not try to take advantage of every part of what we would know to be like a body or a human body, and try to like deform it and change it and make it a little different. And because again, since this is a deity type character, they're not necessarily bound by our own mortal or human type of confines. So there's a lot of complexity to the character, and really such a like my take on trying to do an awesome like version of a Sauron or Emperor Palpatine or whatnot.
Yeah, well, it feels like it takes that and sort of gives us a more elevated metaphor or mythological metaphor. Because if I were him, I would wipe that blood off of my veil. But maybe there's a more metaphorical reason why he's not, or probably they're not. But let me ask you, on your Kickstarter page, you reference some of your things that are that fans of these projects might be interested in the Fabled Offering. You have Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Dune, Dungeons and Dragons. Huge loves. You also have Seven to Eternity here, and that one stuck out for me. I'm curious how that the Rick Remender series. I'm curious why that one is much more of a niche. I feel like comic. What aspects of that?
Is it that everybody dies and it's terrible for everybody?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why I singled that one out. That's the only comic in the list there. Everything else is rather a role-playing game or movie or whatever, or novel series. And the reason why Seven to Eternity is there is because that was really the first comic that I read that was a fantasy comic that would like absolutely blew my mind and made other fantasy comics it put them to shame in my eyes. Like I was like, this is peak storytelling for this kind of genre. And I love a good fantasy story. I appreciate them, and I get lost in them, but a lot of the time I find that with fantasy stories, the creators, they get more so lost in the lore of it or the world, and they don't necessarily take enough time with the characters. And that's something that Rick Remender did with Seven to Eternity, that just like it changed the way I thought about storytelling, and it changed the way I thought about telling a fantasy story. And that's why and it was very gritty and dark, and an emotional roller coaster in every sense of that term. Like I was reading it, and my jaw was dropping, and I was like getting teary-eyed reading it, because it was such like a cut to the jugular. He just went for it. And so when I read it, I was like, I want to do that. I want to do something like that. Like it really kicked my butt into gear, and was like, okay, if I want to do a story in these genres, you know, and kind of play around with them, like what could I do with that? And so it kind of lit a fire under me. And you know, I don't think this book, you know, I've always loved the genres, but I don't think the Fabled Offering would exist or be what it is without Seven to Eternity. So it's a out of all of those inspirations, I think that is the one that I would always go to and say, without this, you know, this wouldn't exist.
That's awesome. I love that book, and it sounds like you do too. And if this is sort of in that family of stories, I'm very excited to read the full volume.
Yeah. Me too. And Nandor, I'm very excited for you. You got the 3 days left, like we said on the Kickstarter. People can still pledge, but you're successful. You got the money, so you're going to make the comic book. At this point, how done is it? I mean, what's sort of the timeline here in terms of when people can expect the book?
Yeah, for sure. So the art is about 60 to 70% done, and we're gonna finish that up. You know, the story's already written, all ready to go, and once Marco Raban is done with the artwork, which should be done, I'd say, in a few weeks to a month, we should have the goal, and the plan is to have the book done and shipped out to backers and fulfilled by early next year, probably like February, March at the very latest. And the only reason it might change a little bit is because we're Marco doesn't want to leave the book. He doesn't want to put it away. He keeps trying to find ways to prolong his experience in it because he loves it so much, and he keeps bothering me about, because it's a one shot, and he keeps bothering me about more pages and continuing the series, or, you know, continuing the story. And so I will say, people that back the book right now, it's standing at about like 40 pages. By the time you get it, it's probably going to be, you know, closer to 50. So, you know,
nice.
and
it's working.
And we're not, you know, we're not changing the price for that. Like, we want to create the best book possible, and we want to like create the most, you know, just engrossing, timeless book we can, so that when you get it, you will read it and you hopefully won't be able to stop thinking about it. So that's really our goal for it.
Awesome. Cool. Nandor, congratulations. Great seeing you again. And good luck, though it doesn't seem
thank
like
you.
So there you go.
Very excited to see you on the radio.
All right, there we go. Yes, I'll definitely be tuning in for his podcast. You can check out the Fabled Offering on Kickstarter for the next 3 days as we are broadcasting this. As I said earlier, later. We got one more guest for you this evening. Very excited to bring him in to talk about his project, The Arrival, which is currently also on Zoop. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Michael Primrose. Jason, welcome.
Hey.
World behind me.
Look at that. That's dope.
So the thing that I think is, well, there's a lot of interesting things about this project, but one of the things that I think is really interesting is you've already got a book series, you've got a world fleshed out, and now you're venturing into comics for Lost Children of Andromeda with this Arrival book. What prompted that? What was interesting to you about expanding into graphic novels and comic books?
Well, I used to draw comics when I was a kid. I don't draw anymore, but I used to draw comics when I was a kid, and so I would go back and forth between writing books, like handwritten novels, and drawing comic books when I really got into Marvel and collecting cards and everything. So I've always done both. But 2050Z is 700 pages. And I found people kind of wondering if they would commit to like an entire book from an author they've never heard of. And I know I have so many people in the indie comic space. I love reading comics. And I was like, I think a comic book is a great way to like get people into the story. And then I got obsessed with creating origin stories for every character in the novel, so that all the comics basically lead you into the book series.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Awesome.
Now, yeah. So The Arrival is the first one. It features Alistair Adams, the main character. But there's others.
Well, to take a step back, and we'll get back to the comic in a second, can you give kind of a broad overview of what Lost Children of Andromeda is? Like, what makes it unique and different as a sci-fi world?
I wonder. I mean, to me, it's because I'm influenced by so many genres. So like you could take elements of like Blade Runner and Ready Player One and
nice.
X-Men and a bit of Star Wars, and you kind of smash it together with that kind of character development and sweeping like visuals of Dune or the kind of the emotion of Interstellar. So I absorb and I watch and I put it all into this very,
wow, look at that
large novel. So I think that's what makes it unique. Like my perspective, and the characters and how they use their abilities in the world. And what I love about it is that I was challenged to create it even more in an even more unique way than I think I started when I was younger.
I mean, I was going to say in terms of creating it in a different way, this is the stupidest way of saying this, but prose is uniquely different from doing it in the graphic novel form. So how did that change how you approach the characters from a dialogue perspective, from a pacing perspective, etc.?
Well, I would say this is my first like comic book I've written and creative directed the art, and so I don't know how I did. We'll have to see. But I know that what I learned in the process was that there are things that can be left unsaid that I would have felt needed to be said in a novel, and that there were things that you completely miss that are visual, like that don't need to be explained, that are completely visual. And when I went into it, I thought about it like a direct translation of like a short story into a novel, into a comic book script. But really, now that I look back at it, I think of it more like an adaptation where you purposefully leave things out or add context, knowing how the whole event unfolds. You can add context in different ways visually that you can't do in a novel that only follows one character's perspective.
Well, and so this is a sort of a prequel or origin story to the characters in the novel. So how does the comic and the novel sort of speak to each other?
The comic basically sets up the origin story of the main character, and so when you get to the novel, you'll see where the character is like some years later. So it really is a guide, like, okay, this major thing happened. Now, if I want to see what continues to happen or what happens to that character, I go to the novel. And so every character is going to get their own version of that. They experience some major disaster along the apocalyptic timeline, and that funnels them into let's see where they show up in the book. What chapter, whose side are they on? What are they looking for? That kind of thing.
Was this work that you did beforehand that didn't make it into the novel? Like, was it sort of character sketches and background material that you did, or did you actually have to work backwards after you had created the novel to form the story of these graphic novels?
So like these graphics that you see here are actually in the novel. So some of the concept art was done, but there were things that I worked with the artist to create. This version of Alistair, the art styles are very different. The art in the novel is very different from the art in the comic. And so we did work. I mean, that's like my favorite shot. I was like, okay, no one knows disaster movies when the comet hits, and then you see the thing and you're like, oh my God, what happened? That was literally, I was like, this shot is, every disaster movie, I've seen them all. I love it.
Well, and I love the color tones. While we're on this page, the color tones here, I feel like it's just such a beautiful page from that, like really leaning into that. Why is it in sort of black, white, and gray?
Yeah, we worked on this kind of color scale for the black, white, and gray. It's a bit nostalgic because it happens in the past of the present, of the novel. So I like that it was black and white. I don't know if we'll do it for all of the stories because some of them I think need color. This one, the only real color is blue, and so that's the only color that would probably stand out in the story. Everything else is pretty like it's this color. And we thought about adding blue in, but I was like, no, let's just keep it this like nostalgic kind of noir vibe.
What was it like welcoming a artist or even somebody else into this process? Because, you know, looking at your book, for anybody who's listening to the podcast, it's a pretty thick book, which means you spent a lot of time and a lot of thought and it living in your head to suddenly bring somebody else in and then potentially have ideas of how things are going to look or how things are going to feel. What was it like letting go of that part?
Oh, it's easy. I mean, because I've collaborated with, like, we did a soundtrack for the novel.
Oh,
So there's
cool.
like an original score we did. So a composer did that. You know, we had the artists come and sing on it and write their own music and sing. And so there's art in the book. So I just give them a guideline, and then whatever comes out is normally better than anything I could have imagined anyway. So
That's great.
so yeah, and I actually do have a printed version of.
Ooh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
So it's like it kind of hits different when you like see it.
Yeah.
Or this
Yeah.
is in a white cover, so you can see like how crisp.
It looks great.
I
Well,
really
tell
do
us-
love that choice, just to use the black, white, and gray.
Yeah.
I know we talked about that, but just very different. It actually makes it stand out very nicely.
Well, and tell us how it feels to you as like a prose writer coming at your first comic and holding in your hands. Were you like what was the moment like?
I was like, oh my god, I want to do the whole book. I was like, I want to do the whole thing. It made me want to take every chapter of the novel and turn it into an issue. But it really made me excited to, you know, like the next character I'm working on right now is Florence, and then I'll do Lisa. And so it really just got me excited to write and produce more of the origin stories, you know, for the other characters.
I wanted to ask you about a bit of language that you've used in selling the book. And to be clear, I'm very complimentary about this. I love that you do this. But on the Zoop page, you say you don't want to miss out on the first edition of the first comic in the next global sci-fi franchise. And that feels like a fair amount of ambition there. Talk to me about that a little bit. How is this the next global sci-fi franchise?
So funny. I actually had a strategy meeting with a colleague of mine today, talking about like how many copies of everything that I would like to distribute, you know, in the next few years. And that has always been the vision, right? Is to be one of the largest global, one of the largest franchises in sci-fi globally. There is, to me, nothing else out there quite like this, especially in sci-fi, right? The sci-fi fantasy genre. And so I just think that the more people read it, I haven't really gotten bad reviews from it. So I feel like the more people read it, it'll just catch on. I just need eyes on pages, and it'll get there. I believe it'll get there. Even if it took me 30 years, it will get there.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's some good positive think going on there. And it seems like you are already getting there because the Zoop is successful. It is funded with the 2 days left. So that's great. So what's the plan then? Now that it is funded, you've got the book in your hand. Seems like it probably should get out to backers relatively soon, I think.
It will be relatively soon. We have to do we have to change some of the formatting, right? So add thank you page, and that may change the page count, which means we may need to do like concept art in there or something else to help. With honoring that 4-page thing. So we're planning to ship latest January. But it could be ready much earlier because we're not dealing with like huge quantities. So it's good. This is my 3rd Kickstarter, first time on a comic. I've crowdfunded 2 novels for much larger amounts, but comics are so, I mean, they're like so expensive. So.
Are you already it sounds like you kind of are, but are you already thinking ahead to the next one at this point?
Yeah, but I don't know when it's going to launch. I mean, yeah, because I already started writing the short story for the next character. This is probably like horrible, but I did try to plug in a section into ChatGPT, and I asked it to convert it to comic book format. And while it didn't do a very good job, do the formatting part for me.
Mm.
Transfer it over and then add in what I wanted to do. It did get the dialogue right, which was nice. But it just reorganized the information in a way that I needed it to be organized rather than me having to do it by hand. So it was very interesting. Yeah. So that may speed things up. But
I mean, it sounds like you're kind of using that the way it's supposed to be used.
Right.
My work, write it for me.
My work being for me. It's more of like a tool. Yeah, because I want to be like, oh, write the story for me. But yeah, so those two titles, I want to get out Lisa and Florence's origin stories. Then that can be like a bundle. And those are basically the three main characters that you follow in the novel anyway. So once you get those, you're off to the races.
Awesome.
Cool.
Jason, this is so cool. Congratulations on all the success. The book looks great. So fingers crossed. I really do want to see you make the other two.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's available now. We have, I think, 2 days left. I really
2 days left.
Ends the 16th, which is tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah, it says 2 days. So
the number's right.
Yeah, it's the 14th today. So you got 2 days.
Tomorrow. It's the 15th for me. It's 1 here.
Oh my gosh. How late is it right now? Where are you?
It's almost 1 a.m. I live in Lisbon now.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Jason, thank you for coming on so late. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. We made you wait until the end. I feel bad now.
All good.
Yeah. All right, Jason, congratulations again. Please go to sleep. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Appreciate it.
Good luck. Enjoy Lisbon.
All right, there we go. That is, as mentioned, going to be on Zoop for the next 2 days. It's called The Arrival.
Looks amazing.
Ooh. Yeah, beautiful art.
And folks, we're going to move on with our next section, which is my favorite section because you all make it up. It is your audience questions. And for audience questions, all you got to do is drop a question on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch in the comments. That can be about absolutely anything. In the meantime, since we're all rude dudes who are not doing Brett's drink, that's okay. He's off
rude dude
right now, so
he's not. Yeah, he's watching the Marvels.
Yeah,
a movie we've all watched.
I
did watch it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We got to tape a podcast about that, man.
We should tape a podcast about that.
What are you drinking, guys? I'm drinking like I don't even remember what it's called. Like it's a modified Boulevardier, which had most of the ingredients of Brett's drink except for the Prosecco. So I felt like it was in the range.
Nice. I mean, same. I did a Boulevardier-esque thing, but I used instead of the sweet vermouth, I used a bergamot, Italicus bergamot liquor, and it was very good.
Very fancy. What about you?
I just opened the next
champagne of beers.
Yes.
Nice. I had a Mountain Dew earlier, so I'm still riding high.
Well, we should probably mention this actually gets into our first question here from Stanley. Did Alex enjoy the Marvel screening? Does Pete like his new house? I did enjoy the Marvel screening. I've actually seen it twice. I saw it a second time with my kids. Wow. We are going to tape a whole Marvel Vision podcast about it.
Yes,
we're just waiting until
we'll get into it.
Saw it. Certainly no argument whatsoever. But Pete, this is your first show from your new house, your first night that you're sleeping there.
Yeah.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but a millionaire told you if you sleep there the whole night, you get his whole fortune.
It's your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I make it through the night, I get to keep the place. I literally just showed up here minutes before the show. I'm going to spend my first night. Hopefully it goes well. Can
you give us the walking tour, walk the laptop around, or what's the deal?
I'm really plugged into the wall over here. That'll be very hard.
Pete has an old school PC. It's like as big as
came with the house.
Yeah, it works on punch cards actually.
Also, I really want to try to set up my upstairs, and hopefully be broadcasting from there eventually. So
are you gonna have a nerd wall? You gonna set up a nerd wall, Pete?
Oh yeah,
like all your Funko Pops and everything.
That's the thing is like Pete, you now have your own space. You have your forever home, and so that's like a great.
What's going to go into the nerd wall? I mean, that's
you got to choose the nerd wall. You got to choose the spot where you're going to die. Those are the two main things you got to figure out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not the same spot.
You got an easy chair, right? Because that's probably where you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna watch
cool.
Pete evolve into some sort of future person who doesn't leave that chair. Have you seen any ghosts?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I've seen a
Watching the
couple over the
background.
course of the show behind you. I didn't want to say anything because of the interview, but
I gotta say,
please,
this is like a Mike Flanagan show in here. There's just like tiny little ghosts in the corner that keep popping up.
The fall of the House of LePage.
Oh boy.
Let's move on to another one. This is from Stray Beans. What do you think of Mark Millar's comments about attracting high-end talent to comics by offering creators a 50-50 split of revenue after a certain number of copies sold? So a little more background here. Mark Millar put up a thread on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. And he said this, basically he was like, the impetus for the chain was he had been apparently talking to some friends who told him that current rates for comics were about $90 a page for writers. I assume he's talking about writers, which is accurate. Rates have not changed probably for 30 years at this point. It's actually awful and reprehensible. He dropped a crazy bomb when he was like, back in the day, I used to get $1,000 a page. And I was like, what are you talking about? But then his solution was like, listen, he's been on this bent of, we got to get top tier creators back to comics. And that's the thing. Specifically by top tier creators back to comics, he means Marvel and DC comics. And his idea here is he was saying that most publishers, and apparently this is not true, I've heard since, but he was like, most publishers, I think you get like a 2% royalty, he was saying, on copies over 50,000 copies sold, which, as we know, frankly, not a lot of comics sell over 50,000 copies.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if that was real. You said that's not
real. Yeah, I think that's not exactly true of all publishers across the board, but that's what he was quoting. His idea is like, tell you what if we did a 50-50 split of profits past 60,000 copies? At which point I read that, and to be frank, I was like, this is Mark Millar talking about himself, is what he's doing. He's like, we got to get top tier creators back to Marvel and DC and give them a lot of money to do that. That's him. He's talking about him. Is this idea here.
I think Mark has had quite a furlough into his own comics. The Netflix experiment that I think we could all say is maybe not working out as well as he intended.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe now he's trying to make a swing back through the big two publishers to see what he can gin up there. And like, it makes sense. If he could make that deal, I think that would be good for a lot of comic creators, and it would draw those people back. It would sort of erase the ladder that I think we've all been enjoying from a comic perspective, where creators come up through Marvel and DC and other comic publishers and then branch out and do their creator-owned books. People like Scott Snyder, James Tynion, like all these up-and-coming people who are now just making some of the best in creator-owned comics out there.
I mean, I'd say on that note, Scott Snyder had a really interesting post on his Substack newsletter responding to that, where he was talking about, where he's like, first of all, I never made $1,000 on a page rate. He made a fair amount of money through royalties, but he never got that page rate even when he was working on like Batman or Dark Knight's Metal or anything like that. Like that did not happen. But his view was, yes, in essence, the idea of, hey, let's get top tier creators and sell top tier comics at Marvel DC. That's a great idea. But he was saying exactly what you were saying, Justin, that there is a difference in the industry happening right now. And I'll take his points a little further, that like, I think what Mark Millar is missing is the focus isn't necessarily on Marvel and DC. Like they're still market leaders 100%, but that's not where the money is, and that's not where creatively people's focus is. I think they've grown beyond that in certain ways. Creators have become smarter about advocating for themselves, not just generating new IP for other companies through Substacks, through creator-owned work. And frankly, where the market is not even the stuff we talk about. It's not Marvel, it's not DC, it's not even really Image or Dark Horse or anything like that.
No.
It's Tokyo Pop, it's Viz, it's Scholastic, that's the stuff that's actually selling and drawing people in. And I don't know if he knows that. Like, I don't have it in front of me right now, but he followed it up, putting up his sort of like dream list of creators. And it was all like for the most part, good creators, but it was things like getting the weirdest one was Joss Whedon and John Cassaday on some DC title, and I was like, you clearly don't know a lot of stuff, or just ignoring it.
Wow, that's funny.
But the other one that he threw out there is like, you got to get John Byrne on Green Lantern. Nothing against John Byrne. I'd love to read a John Byrne Green Lantern title. That sounds great. That is not going to be a million.
That's not a fire starter,
exactly,
as it were.
So this is a long way of saying it's like, I think a very old view on comics is what we're getting from Mark Millar here.
Yeah.
He's not wrong in some sense. Like you said, that'd be a great deal, and people should be paid more. Like, the essence there is correct. The way he's coming about it, I think, is wrong.
Well, but I also think like it's a cyclical thing. Like, we got all that stuff when the MCU was just popping off. You started to get all those people cycling back through, and like, I know we're in a decidedly low point with the MCU, but I think there's going to be an upswing, and we'll get that again as it's coming through. And it'll same with the DC, with all of the launch of the DCU stuff in the next couple of years. Like, we're going to get that big creators coming through again. And if they have a more of a deal, more power to them.
This is from Pablo D. Martinez. Are you guys happy the actors' strike is over? I think I speak for all of us when I say absolutely not.
Yeah, let's get these actors back on the picket line. I'm happy. I'm a member of SAG. Very excited that we won the deal that we got. And the biggest thing, like, that doesn't mean that it's all fine. And like, since it ended, everyone's back to work. All of the movies and sequels that were already in production have maybe started to go back to work, or some of them have. But what it really does is make everything sort of okay for next year. January 1st will be, there's a big reset happening in all of entertainment, not to get too far into this, but that is a little bit bad for everyone who works in it, but it sets us up to at least be moving back into a workable place after 6 months of absolute chaos in the entertainment industry.
Well, the deal mostly seems really good. Like, SAG won, which in all seriousness is great, and they should. And that all said, the contract needs to be renegotiated in 3 years, right? So
it's both. All the contracts are 3-year cycles. Yeah, but I think this is a big year in that the strikes were much larger than have ever happened before. 2 unions striking at the same time never really happens. So like, that it feels like the deal in 3 years will be like, let's just figure this out. We don't want to go through that again. But like, as much as we say like the unions won, it's like, well, the unions have to win. Like, the whole point is the reason we strike is because it's so far out of whack that we have to take extreme measures to just get back to a baseline of normalcy. The amount of profits that the studios and streamers are bringing in is so outsized to what regular people are taking home who work in these industries. And we need to rewrite that ship and then just move forward regular,
100%. Edward Doherty says, does the Marvels actually represent a significant problem with the MCU in terms of box office and an overall awareness of what their audience will pay for? I'm sure we're going to get into this when we talk about the movie a little bit.
So much to say.
But I would argue, I don't think it's the Marvels is a significant problem for the MCU. I think the MCU right now is a problem for the MCU. And almost... not any movie. Like, if you put a Spider-Man in the slot or you put an Avengers movie in the slot, it would have done great. But most movies of the level of the Marvels that you put in this release spot would have had probably very similar problems. Like, if you put, and mind you, I'd be happy to see any of these, but like a Shang-Chi 2 or something like that, or I'm trying to think through anything else, even like maybe Thunderbolts potentially, just because that doesn't have like necessarily the top tier in the same way. I think the MCU is in trouble right now. Like, they are having problems getting people involved and invested in what they're doing. And that hit a critical mass with the Marvels. We've been talking about that all year. Like, what is going to be this breaking point? Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania at the beginning of the year clearly like did not perform the way that they wanted it to. It boded badly. And we kept talking about on our podcast. We were like, what's going to right the ship? Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was an outlier because that credit went to James Gunn. But then everything else has been mixed response critically, from fans, in terms of viewers and box office. You're going to contradict me, Justin. Go ahead.
I have a different take, but I'm curious what Pete has to say.
Well, I also think that like the problem with the Marvels is there was no, because of the strike and everything, there was no way to promote the movie. It just kind of like was next week Marvels is on. It was kind of like it just felt like there wasn't this kind of they weren't able to build up for it or let people know at least.
Here's what doesn't. I understand what you're saying, and I think like that could have contributed into it in some way. I think.
I mean, I agree. I think that
I'm a comic book fan, and I didn't know about this movie until like 2 weeks ago.
For sure. And putting Brie Larson, Aman Vellani, and Teyonah Parris, very charming people, out on the promotional campaign trail would have been great. Given it a couple more $1 million this weekend. But this is also a very specific case. But you look at 2 weekends before, 5 nights at Freddy's, which cost $20 million, made $80 million at the box office, also with nobody going out on the promotional trail. It's another IP, it's another property that people know, just like Marvel, and it did great. There are other things that have done great during the strikes. I don't think it is a reason, but it's not the only reason.
Well, and here, my coming out of watching the Marvels today, like, I think it's just because I think the Marvels is a good movie, but it still is a Marvel formula movie. And I think they were just like, we can keep making these movies forever. And that's just wrong. Like they when they finished Endgame, they should have realized, look, we need to reinvent what this is. We need to find a new version of it, because we can't keep doing the movie where it's like shiny object, random villain, heroes who we like come and get it, and that's it. Like it's what happens to a ton of genre westerns in the past, in the mid 20th century, and they go away because they lose their originality. And I think the MCU they felt like they broke the machine, and they didn't. They won the machine, and then they went back and tried to just do the same thing again. And you can't fool audiences. They lost their audience because they didn't respect them for knowing that they'd seen this story before, despite the fact that the actors are good, the stories, some aspects of them are interesting, but it's just too similar to what's come before.
I think the short answer is there's a lot of different factors that we could talk around. Ultimately, I think they got to do some soul searching. They have to do some. Like, it sounds like they already have, but this is the final canary in the coal mine right now in terms of whatever they're doing going forward. I don't think they've already pushed stuff back. Deadpool 3 is the only movie coming out next year. They also got
that'll crush.
Maybe that'll crush, but that's
the same way the Guardians crushed, because that was a swing. Deadpool was a swing when it came out, and they're still riding on that momentum. Mm-hmm. They'll finish these movies.
But I think Deadpool 3 is going to be credited to Ryan Reynolds, who is like a golden boy right now. Everything he touches turns to gold. I don't think that, given that there are also 3 Sony Marvel movies are being released, and the general public is like, oh, Marvel, that's Deadpool 3, Venom, Madam Web, and Kraven the Hunter. I don't think that's going to be the break that they need it to be. They got to figure something else out.
No, and they will. And like to Edward's question about the box office, this box office was like truly devastating. Just to be clear, like the 47 million I think it made in the weekend is an absolutely devastating number. So they know they're in crisis point. They're going to have a full like admission of guilt, full reset. But I do think they know they can figure this out, and they just need to be more original and move forward.
I think Marvel is done. I think we're never going to see another Marvel movie.
We're going to see all
the comics are done. I think if there's any video games, they're going to cancel them. And I think, frankly, President Biden is going to go house to house burning any comics and DVDs that you have.
Yeah. That's what he wants to do. Him and Scorsese. Scorsese's after your comics.
I'm going to get that guy. Killer's the Flower Moon. I'll kill his Flower Moon.
Oh, boy.
Joshua Wright says, any comic reading rituals, favorite spot, certain reading order, drink/food?
Ooh, great question.
Well, it used to be I would go to Subway. I would go get my comics and then go to Subway sandwiches, get the meatball sub. and just sit there and let the world walk by as I page through my magical entertainment books.
and then life just got worse, I guess.
Life caught up.
Justin, what about you? Any rituals?
I mean, to Pete's point, it has changed. I read most of my comics digitally now, so that's different. I like that. And I'm getting them in more bits and pieces. Like Pete, I used to just like work my way through a stack or read on the subway. My life's changed. I'm not commuting anymore, really, working from home mostly. So it's iPad, coffee out of my home thermos, and I'm moving from room to room, avoiding the loud people in my family.
I think this is going to sound very dorky, and you guys are going to make fun of me, but
Yes.
You put on your Batman pajamas, and you get your flashlight.
No. I usually have what my wife calls. She passes by when I'm doing this. She's like, "Oh, candle time? Are you having candle time?"
Candle time.
What?
Well, because I don't. So I'm reading it on my laptop because we're reading digital comics, and I like to just put out a candle and relax.
Oh my God! I can't believe you're admitting this to us. You're gonna get roasted forever about this. Candle time with Alex Albin. Let's release the podcast.
All right. Well, let's move on. This is from Between Magic
confession.
and Between Magic and Dreams. It's my first time watching. Do you guys focus heavily on indie comics? First of all, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. That is awesome. Welcome. And the answer is yes, I think. Definitely in terms of the interviews, we always try to have people on like we did this episode with Kickstarter and Zoop and other crowdfundings as much as possible. If we see a project and we think it's cool, love to have them on. We also have our Stack podcast, which gets posted every week. And as much as possible, we try to throw non-Marvel and DC stuff in there. A lot of times that's like Image, Dark Horse, Oni, IDW, etc. Those are sort of like the mainstays. But whenever we can throw other stuff in there that we get in advance, we absolutely do. Is that a fair answer, guys?
Yeah, definitely. We love to read it all.
It's from Edward Doherty. Do you think Stephen Root should play Pete in a CBC movie?
Pete, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, huge fan.
Great. And are we talking Stephen Root from like Office Space or Stephen Root from Barry?
Ooh, either way, it's still dark and a little creepy, which I enjoy.
I do want to call you the Raven from now on. Is that cool?
Oh, please do.
What candle scents are we talking about? I don't really care about the candle scents so much as just like the glow of the candle, because again, like
don't care.
I don't love bright light, so having like a dim, calming light is nice for me.
A fucking Nosferatu over here, just reading his comics by
doesn't
candlelight.
Care about the scents. All right,
he's got a candelabra in one hand. Is there
wearing my frilly white one-piece nightgown, wandering the halls, reading my comics. This is from Polar Nights. As a barber, I love this show. It's like the perfect evolution of beard growth. Thank you, Polar Nights.
Beautiful. I just clipped down. My beard was legit out of control up until yesterday.
Huh.
And I think I'm going to have to shave it all off for a job I'm doing this weekend.
What?
So I'm going to look different on Tuesday.
Wow, we won't look like the same white guy.
Michael Tillman says, can last week absentee hosts give their notes on last week's show? I guess that's just me.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think you guys did a great job. I know Michael probably wants me to tear into you, but what I listened to of the show, I think you guys did a really solid job.
Oh, boo.
What could you possibly say?
You didn't listen, you asshole. Otherwise, you wouldn't say that.
No, I do like a spot check of the stuff before I put it up for sure. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I did listen to, like I did my spot check. And what
did you listen to all of the Weekend Geek?
Nope.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good. No, it was good.
Yeah, don't go back. There's no
that I just put up. At that point, I was like, I gotta get this.
Good. Well, then whoever listened to it, don't tell Alex about anything.
Okay.
I just had some fun.
Hey, in your new house, Pete, what about your Punisher shrine, the slippers, etc.? You got that in there?
Edward Doherty, great call.
Oh, the shrine is intact. To move a shrine, it has to be covered in darkness on all possible angles, but it is transported with care. And so
And just to be clear, for those of you that maybe don't know, Pete's Punisher Shrine was something he brought to our live shows for like a solid decade. And it was a pair of slippers, a hat, some other random stuff, and we found out eventually a secret Punisher quiz was also inside the slipper.
Wild,
right?
Yeah, I did a lot of weird layered things and didn't tell anybody.
Are there more
That's true
things
about you across the board, my guy?
Are there other things we haven't yet discovered, Pete?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God!
He just means the body of one of the booth man who's buried in the house.
You mean the booth man who came on our show and then became famous?
Anthony Marquez, you've been Weekend at Bernie's seeing him for the past couple of years. Kevin says, if you had one wish for comic superhero film and television, what would it be?
For me, it boils down to two words: get weird. I feel like the Marvels did this to some degree, but like be weirder and different. The whole MCU project was started as let's do genre storytelling with a comic book lens, and they just got so far. They formalized that, and I feel like if you just jump back and get into it, there's an issue that we're going to talk about in the stack, Peach Momoko issue that comes out this week for Star Wars.
Oh, dude.
Star Wars Visions comic, and I'm like, that's the biggest example of like, do interesting storytelling. Like
yes, dude. It's the future of comic books, dude. It's all art, no words. Just it's unfucking believable.
Oh my God! If they could do like no pages as well, chef kiss.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing. Just thought expressions.
I just want a comic book writer to blow a handful of dust into my face and be like, enjoy.
This is from Pablo again. I saw something out there that said Paramount is being bought by Warner Brothers Discovery. What do you think? Bad. I think that's bad if that's true. I don't think that's true, but
there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
The streamers will eventually consolidate to some degree in the next couple of years. I think it's inevitable because none of them are making the amount of money that their parent companies want them to. But it's probably bad across the board.
Yeah. Sorry if you already have, but did you all talk about the TVMA Echo trailer? I believe you guys did on Week and Geek.
We did.
Any quick, like one sentence reactions?
Looks amazing. I'm so excited for it.
I'm very surprised by it. It's much more intense than I thought it was going to be, but the trailer's great. There's been a lot of negative press conversation about Echo, but like I think we have to ignore all of that all the time now. Also about the Marvels. If the bad box office or anything, so there's a screaming child above me, but that child loves the MCU.
Yeah, that child is like, Echo.
Yeah.
Gonna watch all 5
rooting
episodes.
for Kingpin, that child, unfortunately.
Oh man. That's
me too. Me too, kid.
Yeah, that's a young Pete LePage.
Hey, thanks for watching my kids for me, man.
Full sociopath, yeah. But what I was saying is that I think if the bad box office is holding you back, don't I would say put that aside. Go see the stuff that interests you, and we haven't reviewed it yet fully, but I think the Marvels is one of the better versions of the MCU movies in the last several years.
Interesting. Ooh. Nelson Kelso says, have you guys seen the trailer for Merry Little Batman coming to Amazon? Thoughts? I have. I don't know if you guys also watched it today.
Yeah.
No.
It came out today. Super fun. I love the animation style. It feels like vintage Ren and Stimpy era Nickelodeon to me. Very into it. Seems fun.
Yeah, Pete, are you on top of this? This is written by a New York comedy person. I believe. Morgan Evans, former New York, now LA, but yeah.
Good old LA Evans.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah, super fun. I think you're going to be super into it, Pete. I'm excited to check that out. Seems like a good family film. Frederica Rosa says, do you guys think there's burnout with comic movies? I feel like for a while, everything revolved around it, that maybe people have an annoyance with the subject now. Yes.
But the only thing I don't like about that is the stereotype of all comic movies are bad. Then it's no, or projects even. And it's like, no, the formulaic expected ones are not good. The original interesting ones are good. Like there's a show coming out this week based on a comic to Netflix called Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. And that's going to be dope. Like it's not gonna, there should be no burnout associated with that. And that's a comic book property. Why are we can't lump them all together.
Yeah. And even in terms of the films, like thinking back through the past year, it's like, ooh, total burnout with comic book movies, but Guardians of the Galaxy was good. And also Blue Beetle was good. And also The Marvels was very fun. And also Doom Patrol was fun. And Invincible is fun. And the list goes on. There 100% is burnout from casual fans or people who just weren't that interested in it, but felt an obligation to go anyway. But there's still good stuff. It comes down to, if you are making good things, people will watch it and be interested in. But we are now past the era where anything with a superhero will draw people to it. That's what we're past. And that's okay, actually.
Maybe we're not at a point to look back on it yet, but I think I would like to pinpoint that Quantum Mania is the one where it's like, oh, you're sort of insulting us with this. Like, the tone is wrong. The tone is sort of like, yeah, you'll watch anything. It was a little bit making fun of us, the viewer, and the way that it was made. And it didn't really honor a lot of stuff. The actors were good, and some of the performance in the midst of it was good. But like the whole story was sort of like, yeah, you're going to see this. And that, I think, the dismissiveness of that is where the burnout is coming.
Well, and frankly, I mean, I'd throw, not to just lump on the MCU, but I think, again, general viewers are like, superhero. They don't care if it's Marvel or DC or anything like that. Just look at his superhero stuff. You also had a string of DC things that people hated or just did not see whatsoever. So I think that all bands together to be like, well, this isn't necessary to see anymore. And that's why things like Killers of the Flower Moon are making like hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office, because people are leaving superheroes and they're going back to adult movies at the theater with their wives and husbands.
Well, I guess we'll see about that.
No, we're not. That also isn't doing well at the box office. But no. I think like there's this prevailing sentiment from film snobs of like, once we get rid of superheroes, people will go back to watching adult movies. And that's also not true. They'll just see things that they want to see that seem interesting. And that's it.
Real quick, I don't know if you've seen that Anthony Marquez is.
No, I do want to bring this up. Anthony Marquez says, I love the show. And I love being a birdie for Pete.
That's so funny.
You, Anthony's the man.
He is the man. And he has a question here as well. Thoughts on DC's Compact Comics announcement? If there will be any real impact of putting them in format affordable price, testing waters to move away from periodicals. So if you don't know about this, DC next year, I think it's in June, is releasing a line called Compact Comics. These are not necessarily manga size. They're a little like half an inch larger or something like that. They're $9.99, and they include collections of just classic runs. Watchmen is in it. You got All-Star Superman is in it. Excitingly, all of Far Sector is in it. All 12 issues and other things. And these are not black and white. They're full color reproductions of the comics. And they promised that it's not just shrinking it down. So, you know, you're going to get the lettering looks right, the graphics look right, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is great. This is so smart to make something that is an affordable price that you're like, oh yeah, I can just grab this on my shelf.
You get a lot for it, which is great.
100%. This is such a smart move. I don't know if it will. I don't think they're testing the waters to move away from periodicals. I think they're just trying to move into the manga market, like we were talking about earlier in the show. That is so much huger than what DC has. And DC has always been very smart and forward thinking in terms of the bookstore market, in terms of trades and graphic novels. And this is just, I think, another very smart move from them.
Go to where the eyeballs are. It's just, they know they have good stories. Take your best stories, put them where people are buying stories in this genre. Easy. Easy to do.
Well, and it's frankly, it's like more of a casual buy, being like, oh, that's less than $10. Yeah, I'll try that. I'll pick that up for the amount of comics that I'm getting here versus getting a trade collection that's going to be $15, $20 for 6 issues. It's a very different thing. This way you can pick up all of All-Star Superman, all of Batman Hush. I think it's Batman Hush Volume 1. But regardless, like all of these great runs, there's stuff there that I've never read that I'll definitely pick up. I think it's such a smart move, and I hope they keep with it. And I hope people pick it up. And last thing before we wrap up here, Quarter Kick says, I've been here too long not to hear Pete say super tight bananas. Missed my dinner for this. Pete, take it away.
Corner Kick is still hungry.
Super tight bananas.
We did it.
Really beautiful. How about Pablo D. Martinez? I miss the shrine so much.
Oh, Pablo. Oh.
Wow, what a
You mean
good
the smell
show for Pete.
The dusty smell of
Hey,
the shrine?
how dare you? I've said numerous times I've had it professionally cleaned.
I know. That sound like he doth protest too much. You know what I mean?
All right,
That's
why don't
a
we
stink.
move
It's a shrine
on?
stink.
Why don't we move on to
Yeah,
our
let's
next
think about
section,
that.
which is trivia. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Pete LePage.
All right. $5 in Midtown Comics online, because if you had $25, you go get some comics. Yeah.
Who wants it? Get in there. Corner Kick, where you at?
You
You
know,
just got your
get
10
first
bananas,
hand up
Winston.
or a volunteering of Pablo. You know, whatever. Really, whoever's really looking.
Didn't Pablo just do it last week?
He did do it last week.
Oh, okay, well then.
And just to mention to Pablo, he sent us an email being like, hey, I didn't get my gift card. That's on Midtown Comics, man. That is not on me. But I'll check into it for you.
It takes a little while to get the gift card.
Exactly. I don't know why it takes them, honestly. Ooh, Corner Kick says me. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, Corner Kick. Let's make this dinner missing worth it. All right.
Do a new dinner at Long John Silver.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We could also offer you a Long John Silver if you would like. All right, today's trivia is on comic book facts and a small nod to the legend Matthew Perry, R.I.P. Please listen to all 3 options before making your selection.
Fools Rush In?
What?
Is it Fools Rush In? Is that your secret movie?
Oh, you fucking
What about Wagons East? Could be Wagons East.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. Which badass moment actually happened to Hulk? Is it A, becoming God of Thunder? B, he thunderclapped 80 miles away from Zalbs, so only felt a slap across his Cornelian face? Or is it C, Joanne No Yes?
I mean, all the no yes, crazy name.
Yeah,
all could be true. All these could be true.
I guess we'll find out. This is really tough.
Don't overthink it. Just think to yourself, A is the correct answer, and it's also the first one that should pop in.
Well, and also when you think it, you also have to type in an A into the comment section.
Yeah,
you can't just think it.
You can't just think it. You're right. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we assume they said A, and then we'll move on?
Yeah,
there it is.
There we go.
All right, here we go. Question number 2. In Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, number 132, written by Sophie Campbell, who visits the Turtles? Is it A, a Force Ghost Splinter, B, a dude who is way too into horror movies, or is it C, Johnny Gore?
There's already an A in here from Corner Kick. I don't know if it's a residual A from an earlier answer, but
Is it A?
I
It
think
is
it's
A.
pretty good.
Wow, there we go. I think Quarter Kick has figured this out.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think Corner
Kick is
ahead
a
of the
hack.
game.
Corner Kick, great kick. First off, second, hack the system.
Yeah. Shout outs to Corner Kick. All right, here we go. Last one. Question number 3. In Godzilla versus Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 1, who does Godzilla fight? Is it A, Dragon Zord, B, Gary the Gorgonzola, or C, Gary Gold?
Wow.
Justin, did you figure out how to switch us just now?
What are you talking about? I'm just doing trivia. Corner Kick has said A. Yeah.
Nice.
All right,
job,
there we
Corner
go.
Kick.
Corner
You're
Kick,
killing
shoot us. I hate this. Corner Kick, shoot us an email and we will get you. We will get you a $25 gift card to Midtown Comics. Hey, Pete, what was the secret movie that you were hinting at?
It's so funny that you should ask that. I was talking about the 2000 double rom-com, The Whole Nine Yards.
Whoa! Twist a Maru.
I will say, I think we said all of the movies that it could have been.
I wrote in. I was definitely going to do Fool's Ruin in, and then I was like, no. Whole Nine Yards is better.
Wow.
It is a good movie. That is a good movie.
Thank
Why
you
don't we talk about what new comic books are coming out this week? What are you guys looking forward to, Pete?
Oh my God. Star Wars Visions, Pigma Mocha #1, Lotus Land #1, and also Detectives Comics 1077.
Justin, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
A lot of picks there. I gotta say, I also enjoyed the Peach Momoko book. I think Danger Street #11, bringing Tom King's series to an penultimate book. But I want to shout out Green Lantern #5, a book that, it sort of was like a lot of table setting. And this issue, I think, is one of the best Hal Jordan issues to come out since Jeff Johns' original takeover of the book. It's a huge Hal Jordan issue if you're a fan. So check it out.
Well, I'll tell you what you're saying is ridiculous, but the backup story is amazeballs.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk about it more. I'm going to give a shout out to Superior Spider-Man #1. Love that era.
Look at you.
I'm very excited to see how they're going to bring that back. Also, Carnage #1, because we talked to Torrin Gronbach, the author at Comic-Con.
So great.
And her excitement was very infectious for that.
Let me also shout out The Forged #6 from Image Comics. By Greg Rucka. This book is wild, and it's a wild build to this issue, but definitely worth the read through. And this issue is so
plus the art.
The art's very good.
I would say it's worth it for the art alone.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, it is your catchphrase.
All right, folks. That is it for this week's show. A couple of people we want to thank. We want to thank Wells Thompson for coming on. Check out Depths on Zoop for the next week and change. Also, Nandor Shaffer for coming on to talk about the Fabled Offering. That's on Kickstarter right now. Jason Michael Primrose for talking about The Arrival, which is also on Zoop. Next week, Jordan Thomas is going to be here to talk about The Man from Maybe. Nicholas Tana to talk about E-Junkie, and Sarah Kuhn to talk about Archie Comics. Darkling is coming back. Bunch of podcasts we have. Scott Pilgrim versus the podcast. Scott, the anime is coming out this Friday. We got episodes that are going to come out for you almost daily about that. Very excited about that. Comic Book Club News, our daily podcast where we give you comic book news. Marvel Vision, our Marvel podcast. We just finished up talking about Loki, and I'm sure we'll have more to come. Podvincible, our Invincible podcast, is ongoing for the 4 episodes of that show. And the Doom Room, our Doom Patrol podcast, we finished up talking about the entire series. So check that out. That is all there. Patreon.com/Comic Book Club to support the show and all the shows we do. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Android, Spotify, or the app of your choice. At Comic Book Live on Twitter/X. Comic Book Club Live on Instagram. Comic Book Club Live on TikTok. ComicBookClubLive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, good night.
Watch out for those sex ghosts, Pete. Later.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right, and just to go through the doubles again, we have.
They're supporting twice.
They're supporting twice. Okay, so that
you're going to charge them twice because we said them twice.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's how it works.
They know we love them more than anybody else. Good night, everybody. Bye. What?